She was just the cleaning lady, until the CEO locked the door and said, "You're not getting away today." A thrilling story of redemption, love, passion, and new beginnings. Behind that cheap uniform was a secret capable of destroying empires. What began as revenge turned into a dangerous game of desire and power. Watch this story until the end. You'll be surprised by this tale. If you like stories of love and romance, subscribe to this channel, leave your comment. We post videos like this every day. Continuing. New York never sleeps, but it has its hours of exhaustion. At 3 in the morning, the city breathes like a wounded giant, with lights flickering in sleepless apartments and the distant echo of sirens cutting through the humid silence. It's at this hour that Emily Sanders emerges from the shadows, carrying her invisibility like a protective cloak. She learned that the best hours to exist are those when the world rests, when the powerful sleep and the corridors echo only with the discreet footsteps of those who don't have the luxury of dreaming during the night. Price Tower rose like a blade of glass and steel in the heart of the Upper East Side, slicing the New York sky with its straight, merciless lines. 47 floors of concentrated power, where each square foot was worth more than the entire life of people like Emily. She knew every corner of that colossus, every curve of the corridors, every stain on the marble that needed to be removed before the executives arrived in the morning. She knew the sounds the building made when it was empty, the moans of the elevators, the whisper of the air conditioning, the slight cracking of the windows when the wind blew hard. For 2.5 years she had worked there, always on the night shift, always invisible. She preferred it that way. The night was her ally, hiding the purple marks that sometimes appeared on her arms, disguising the eyes swollen from crying, protecting her from curious glances that might ask questions she didn't know how to answer. Mark, her ex-husband, had the gift of appearing at the most inopportune moments, always with new threats, always with new reasons to believe that she still owed him something that she had never been able to fully understand. On that Thursday night, Emily arrived at the building 10 minutes late. Constance, the supervisor, was waiting for her in the lobby with that disapproving look she generously distributed among the female employees. A thin woman, with hair pulled back in a too-tight bun, who spoke as if she had swallowed the cleaning company's internal regulations. "You know that punctuality is fundamental in this company, Emily," said Constance, checking a clipboard with yellowed sheets. "Mr. Price does not tolerate delays, even if he isn't here at this hour." Emily nodded in silence, taking her cart with cleaning products. She knew that Constance liked to remind all the employees that they worked in the building of the most powerful man in the city, as if that gave them some importance by proxy. Alexander Price was an urban legend among the cleaning women. They said he arrived before 6 in the morning and left after 11 at night, that he had eyes of ice and a voice of command, that he fired people with a nod of his head, and that no woman could resist him, although they all ended up being discarded like dry leaves. "Today you'll do floors 22 through 30, Constance continued, "and leave the 47th for the end, as always. If by chance you see movement up there, come down immediately, understood?" Emily knew the rules. The top floor was sacred territory, untouchable. Alexander Price lived there in a penthouse that occupied the entire floor, and even when he traveled, nobody but the most senior employees could even set foot in the place. She had never gone up there, had never felt curious. She had learned early in life that too much curiosity could be dangerous. The service elevator took her to the 22nd floor. There she began her familiar routine: vacuuming carpets, cleaning windows, disinfecting bathrooms, organizing meeting rooms. Automatic, almost meditative movements that allowed her mind to wander far from that place. Sometimes she thought about her mother, who had died when she was 15, taking with her all the secrets about who Emily's father was. Sometimes she thought about the books she liked to read during work breaks, stories of brave women who faced dragons and won. Sometimes, unintentionally, she thought about Mark and wondered when he would appear again. It was almost 4 hours of silent work, going up floor by floor, cleaning traces of the corporate life that boiled during the day. At 7 in the morning, only the 47th floor remained. Emily hesitated before the elevator buttons. Constance had said that Alexander Price was traveling to London, that he would return only next week. The floor would be empty. It would just be another cleaning routine. But when the doors opened, she immediately knew something was wrong. The lights were on. Not all of them, but some, creating a penumbra that made the place seem more intimate, more human. Emily pushed the cart out of the elevator, her heart beginning to beat faster. Perhaps he had returned early from his trip. Perhaps she should go down immediately, follow Constance's instructions. But her feet didn't obey. Something pulled her forward, a curiosity she couldn't explain. The apartment was more impressive than she had imagined. Glass walls from floor to ceiling offered a panoramic view of New York that took her breath away. The decor was minimalist, but each piece screamed elegance and money. Leather sofas that seemed never to have been used, works of art that she recognized from magazines, a kitchen that shone like a laboratory. Emily began to work slowly, trying to make as little noise as possible. Maybe he was sleeping in one of the bedrooms. Maybe he wasn't even there and the lights were just an automated system. She was wiping the kitchen counter when she heard footsteps behind her. "You shouldn't be here." The voice was deep, controlled, but there was something in it that made Emily shiver. She turned slowly, still holding the cloth in her hands, and saw Alexander Price for the first time. He was taller than she had imagined, with broad shoulders under a white shirt that seemed to have been tailor-made. His dark hair was slightly disheveled, as if he had just woken up, and his eyes were exactly as the women described, cold, penetrating, the kind that seemed to see through the skin. But there was something else, something the gossip didn't capture, an ancient sadness, hidden behind the mask of control. I didn't know you were here," stammered Emily, taking a step back. "Constance said you were traveling. I can come back another day. No," he said, walking toward her with calculated movements, like a predator circling its prey. "You're already here. You can continue." Emily tried to concentrate on cleaning, but she felt his eyes on her, studying each movement, each gesture. It was as if he were trying to decipher a secret code written in her posture, in her movements. This made her nervous, but also strangely alert. No one had ever looked at her that way, with that intensity. "What's your name?" he asked suddenly. "Emily," she answered without raising her eyes from the floor she was cleaning. "Emily," he repeated, as if savoring the name. "How long have you worked here?" 2.5 years, sir. And before that? The question caught her off guard. No one had ever been interested in her life before work. No one ever asked personal questions. She hesitated, not knowing if she should answer. "I worked in other places," she finally said. "Houses, smaller offices." "Married?" "Divorced." Alexander moved closer, until he was only a few feet away. Emily could smell his perfume, something expensive and masculine that made her head spin. She could see the details of his face, the stubble, a small scar near his chin. "Children?" "No." "Family?" "No." He nodded, as if this information confirmed something he already knew. Emily didn't understand why he was asking all these questions, but there was something in the way he looked at her that prevented her from simply leaving. "Are you afraid of me?" he asked. The question surprised her. Emily raised her eyes for the first time since he had appeared, meeting his gaze. There was something vulnerable in that question, something that didn't match the image of the powerful and relentless man that everyone painted. "Should I be?" she replied. An almost imperceptible smile touched his lips. "Probably." "Then yes," said Emily, surprising herself with her own courage. "I am afraid." "But you won't run away." It wasn't a question. It was a statement. And the worst part was that he was right. Emily knew she should take her cart, get in the elevator, and go down immediately. She knew that conversation had already crossed all professional boundaries. She knew she was playing with fire, but she couldn't move. "Why don't you leave?" he asked, taking another step toward her. "I don't know," she said, and it was the most honest truth she had told in a long time. Alexander stopped right in front of her, so close that she could feel the heat of his body. He raised his hand slowly, as if he were going to touch her, but stopped midway, leaving his fingers suspended in the air between them. "You should know," he said, his voice even lower, "that I am not a good man." "No one is just good," Emily replied without averting her gaze. "You know nothing about me. I know that you're alone in this huge apartment at 7 in the morning, talking to a cleaning lady as if she were the first person you've seen in a long time." The observation caught him off guard. Emily saw something move in his eyes, a crack in the mask of control. For a moment, he seemed less emperor and more man. "You are observant," he said. "Invisible," she corrected. Invisible people observe a lot. You are not invisible to me. The phrase hung in the air between them, loaded with meanings that neither dared to explore. Emily felt her heart beating so hard that she was sure he could hear it. Something was happening there, something that completely escaped her control and understanding. "I need to finish my work," she said, more to break the silence than because she actually cared about cleaning. "Of course," he said, stepping back a few paces. "I don't want to get in the way." But he didn't leave. He stayed there watching as she finished cleaning the kitchen, then the living room, then the office. Sometimes he made casual comments about the weather, about traffic, about New York. Sometimes he remained silent, just watching. Emily tried to concentrate on her work, but she felt hyper-aware of every movement, every breath. When she reached the master bedroom, she hesitated at the door. It was an intimate, personal space, and it seemed like an invasion to enter there in his presence. Alexander noticed her hesitation. "You can enter," he said. "There's nothing there you can't see." The bedroom was as minimalist as the rest of the apartment. A king-size bed with impeccable white sheets, a dark wood dresser, a reading chair. But there were details that revealed a little more of the man behind the facade. A framed photo of an older woman, who must have been his mother. Books stacked on the bedside table, not just business manuals, but literature, poetry. A guitar leaning against a corner with signs of use. "You play?" Emily asked, indicating the guitar. "I used to," he replied. "It's been a while. Why did you stop?" There was no more time for music. Emily finished cleaning the bedroom in silence, but she could feel the weight of the melancholy that had settled in the environment. When she left, she found Alexander in the living room, looking through the window at the city awakening below. "Done," she said. "I finished." He turned to her, and for a moment they just looked at each other. There was something unresolved in the air, a tension that neither of them knew how to handle. "Emily," he said, Can you come back tomorrow?" "I always come back," she replied, confused. "No, not for work, just to talk." The question caught her completely off guard. Men like Alexander Price didn't ask to talk to women like her. They didn't ask for anything. They just took what they wanted. "I don't know if it would be appropriate," she said. "It probably wouldn't be." "Then why are you asking?" Alexander went to her, stopping a few inches away. Emily could see the lines of expression around his eyes, signs of sleepless nights and worries that money couldn't solve. "Because," he said, "for the first time in a long time, I don't feel alone." The brutal honesty of the confession made something move in Emily's chest. She recognized that loneliness, that isolation that no amount of people around could alleviate. She recognized it because it was exactly how she had felt for years. "I don't know anything about your world," she said, "and I don't know anything about yours. Maybe that's why." Emily looked at him, at that powerful man who suddenly seemed as lost as she was. She knew she should say no, that she should keep her distance, that nothing good could come from a connection between two such different worlds. But there was something in his voice, in the way he looked at her, that made all her defenses crumble. "I finish work at 7, she said. "At 7:30? "At 7:30. Alexander smiled, and it was the first time she saw a genuine smile on his face. It completely transformed his expression, making him younger, more human. "Until tomorrow, then," he said. "Until tomorrow." Emily took her cart and headed to the elevator, feeling his eyes following her every step. When the doors closed, she leaned against the wall and tried to process what had just happened. She had just accepted an invitation from Alexander Price. She had crossed a line that she shouldn't have crossed. During the journey back home, on the crowded morning bus, Emily couldn't stop thinking about that conversation. There was something about Alexander that awakened in her feelings that she thought she had buried forever. It wasn't just physical attraction, although that existed too. It was the recognition of a wounded soul, of someone who, like her, had learned to protect himself from the world by isolating himself from it. When she arrived at her small apartment in Queens, Emily realized that she was smiling. It had been a long time since she had smiled for real, without forcing, without pretending. For the first time in years, she had something to look forward to with anticipation. She didn't know that on the other side of the city, in his apartment on the 47th floor, Alexander Price was also smiling. And she didn't know that he had spent the last 2.5 years observing her, waiting for the right moment for that conversation. She didn't know that none of it was coincidence, not yet, but she would soon discover that some encounters are written by destiny with ink of blood and tears, and that sometimes, when two wounded people meet, the result can be either salvation or destruction, or both at the same time. Emily spent the entire day trying to convince herself not to go. Lying on the narrow bed in her apartment, looking at the cracked ceiling, she mentally listed all the reasons why that meeting was a terrible idea. Alexander Price was her boss, even if indirectly. He was a powerful man, accustomed to getting everything he wanted. She was just a cleaning lady, a woman with too many problems and too much baggage to interest someone like him for long. But no matter how hard she tried to convince herself, she couldn't forget the way he had smiled when she said she would come back. She couldn't forget the vulnerability in his voice when he confessed that he didn't feel alone beside her. There was something about that man that went beyond the facade of the ruthless CEO, something that echoed with her own loneliness. At 6 in the evening, after taking a shower and putting on the most decent clothes she owned, a navy blue blouse and dark jeans, Emily was on her way to Midtown. She wasn't sure if he would really be there waiting, if it hadn't been just a momentary impulse that he would have already forgotten. Men like Alexander Price didn't wait for women like her. But when the elevator opened on the 47th floor, he was there, no longer in the wrinkled shirt from the previous morning, but in a simple black t-shirt and jeans, a more casual version of himself that made her realize that he had prepared for this meeting as much as she had. "You came," he said, and there was a note of genuine relief in his voice. "I said I would," Emily replied, stepping out of the elevator. "People don't always keep their promises." "I do," Alexander smiled, and she noticed that he had dimples when he smiled for real. It was a disconcerting detail that made his face less intimidating and more human. "Are you hungry?" he asked. "I thought we could have dinner together." Emily looked around the luxurious apartment, imagining what kind of dinner he had in mind. Probably some renowned chef, sophisticated dishes that she wouldn't even know how to pronounce the name of. "I cooked," he said, seeming to notice her discomfort. "Nothing too elaborate. I hope you like pasta." The confession surprised her. Emily tried to imagine Alexander Price in the kitchen, preparing a meal with his own hands, and the image simply wouldn't form in her mind. "You cook?" she asked. "I learned out of necessity," he replied, guiding her to the kitchen. "When you live alone for so long, you either learn to cook or live on delivery for the rest of your life." The kitchen smelled of garlic and basil. On the stove, a pot bubbled softly, exhaling an aroma that made Emily's stomach growl. She hadn't eaten anything all day, too nervous to swallow anything. "Spaghetti carbonara," he said, stirring the sauce with a wooden spoon. "My mother used to make it when I was a child." "Your mother cooked?" "She cooked very well. She always said that food made with love has a different taste." There was affection in his voice when he spoke of his mother, a softness that contrasted with the hardness that he showed to the world. Emily wondered if she had died, if that was why he spoke of her in the past tense. "Is she still—" Emily began to ask, but interrupted herself, thinking that it might be too intimate. "She died 5 years ago," Alexander replied, without taking his eyes off the pot. "Cancer. It was quick, at least." "I'm sorry." "She would have liked you," he said, finally looking at Emily. She had a soft spot for authentic people. She said she could recognize an honest soul from miles away. Emily felt her face heat up. She didn't know how to respond to such a direct compliment, especially coming from someone who barely knew her. "You don't know anything about me," she said. "I know more than you think." There was something in the way he said this that made her shiver. It wasn't a threat exactly, but there was a certainty in his voice that made her uncomfortable. "What do you mean by that?" Alexander turned off the heat and turned to her completely. For a moment, Emily thought he was going to confess something important, reveal some secret that would explain why he had invited her to dinner, but he just shook his head and smiled. "Nothing important," he said. "Let's eat before it gets cold." They ate in the living room, sitting on the sofa that was too big for 2 people, with the plates balanced on their laps. The food was delicious, simple, but made with care, and Emily realized that it had been a long time since she had eaten something prepared especially for her. "Tell me about yourself," Alexander said, twirling spaghetti on his fork. "Where did you grow up?" "Queens," Emily replied. "Northeastern Queens, do you know it?" "I know it by name." "It's far from here." "Very far." Alexander nodded, seeming to understand that she wasn't just talking about geographic distance. Your parents? My mother died when I was 15. My father... Emily hesitated, as she always did when the subject came to her father. I never knew him. My mother never talked about him. It must have been difficult growing up without a father. It was, but my mother made up for it. She was amazing. Emily smiled, remembering the strong woman who had raised her alone. She worked 3 jobs to keep me in school. She said that education was the only thing that no one could take away from me. She was right. She was. But after she died, I kind of lost my way. I married very young to the wrong man for the wrong reasons. The ex-husband? Emily nodded, not wanting to go into details about Mark. She didn't want to ruin that night by talking about the scars he had left, about the fear she still felt when she heard footsteps in the hallway of the building where she lived. And you, she asked, changing the subject, what's it like growing up with all this and power? Alexander laughed, but there was no humor in the sound. You think I was born with all this? Weren't you? My mother was a cleaning lady, just like you. My father was a factory worker. I grew up in Brooklyn, when it was still a working-class neighborhood before it became a middle-class stronghold. The revelation shocked her. Emily had assumed that he came from a rich family, that he had inherited the business empire he commanded. How did you... she began to ask. I studied a lot. Full scholarship to college, 2 jobs to support myself, slept 4 hours a night. Then I worked at a consulting firm, made some risky investments that paid off, met the right people. He paused as if deciding how much to reveal. And I learned that sometimes you have to be ruthless to survive. Do you miss it? How it was before? Every day. The honesty of the answer surprised her. Emily had expected him to talk about the advantages of his current position, about how his life had improved. But there was melancholy in his eyes, a longing for something that money couldn't buy back. Why did you invite me to dinner? She asked suddenly. Alexander put his empty plate on the coffee table and turned to her. Can I be honest? I prefer it. Because when you look at me, you don't see the CEO of Price Holdings. You see just a man. It's been a long time since someone looked at me like that. And how do other women look at you? As if I were a bank account with legs. Emily laughed, and the sound echoed through the silent apartment. It was a genuine, spontaneous laugh, and she saw something light up in his eyes when he heard it. You have a beautiful laugh, he said. It's been a long time since I really laughed. Why? The question caught her off guard. Emily realized that she no longer knew how to answer that. Why had she stopped laughing? Why had she settled for a life without joy, without surprises, without moments like this? I think I forgot how, she finally said. Then let's remember together. Alexander stood up and extended his hand to her. Come, I want to show you something. Emily hesitated for a moment but took his hand. His fingers were warm, firm, and she felt an electric current run up her arm when he touched her. He led her to a door that she hadn't noticed the night before. When he opened it, it revealed a spiral staircase that led up to the roof terrace. Up there, New York stretched infinitely in all directions, a sea of lights blinking in the darkness. My God, Emily whispered, walking to the edge of the terrace. Beautiful, isn't it? It's amazing. Do you come up here often? When I can't sleep, which lately has been almost every night. Emily turned to him. Insomnia. Difficulty turning off my mind. Too much work. Too many decisions. Too much responsibility. Loneliness? Alexander looked at her for a long moment before answering. Yes, a lot of loneliness. They stood there side by side, looking at the city that stretched out at their feet. Emily could feel the warmth of his body, the smell of his perfume mixed with the aroma of the food they had shared. There was something intense in the air, a tension she couldn't define. Emily, he said finally, and his voice was deeper, more intimate. Yes? I need to tell you something. His tone changed, became more serious, almost solemn. Emily turned to face him, her heart beginning to beat faster. You make me nervous when you talk like that, she said, trying to ease the tension. You shouldn't. At least, not for that reason. Alexander ran his hand through his hair, a gesture that she was beginning to recognize as a sign of nervousness. I didn't meet you by chance, Emily. What do you mean? I knew who you were even before you started working in the building. I knew your name, I knew where you lived, I knew about your ex-husband. Emily felt the blood freeze in her veins. How did you... I had you hired. The words echoed on the terrace like a gunshot. Emily took a step back, trying to process what she had just heard. You had me hired, she repeated, her voice coming out higher than normal. Yes. Why? Alexander approached her, but Emily took another step back. His expression was intense, almost desperate. Because I needed to meet you. Because for a long time, I wanted to meet you. That doesn't make sense, you didn't even know me. But I knew who you were. I knew what you represented. I don't represent anything, I am nobody. You're wrong. Alexander stopped approaching, seeing the fear in her eyes. You are the daughter of Edward Sanders. The name hit Emily like a punch in the stomach. Edward Sanders. The name that her mother whispered sometimes when she thought she wasn't listening. The name that appeared on the papers when she tried to find out who her father was, years after her mother's death. The name she tried to forget when she discovered who Edward Sanders really was. How do you know that? She asked, her voice trembling. Because Edward Sanders destroyed my family, destroyed my life, and you are the only connection that remains to him. Emily felt dizzy. The city lights began to blur, and she had to lean on the wall of the terrace to avoid falling. I have nothing to do with him, she said. I didn't even know my father. I know, but he left something for you, something I need. I don't know what you're talking about. Documents, evidence, things he hid before he died. My father didn't die. He simply disappeared. No, Emily. He died. 10 years ago. And when he died, he left instructions that when you turned 30, you would receive an inheritance. What inheritance? I never received anything. Because I prevented it. The words came out low, almost a whisper, but Emily heard them clearly. She turned to him, her eyes wide with shock and anger. You prevented it. I needed to meet you first. I needed to understand what kind of person you were before allowing you to have access to that. You don't have the right to prevent anything. You don't have the right to decide anything about my life. I know it was wrong. But if you knew who your father was, if you knew the things he did, I know who he was. Emily moved away from him, walking toward the stairs. I know he was a terrible man, that he destroyed lives, that he abandoned my mother when he found out she was pregnant. You think I didn't research? That I didn't try to understand why my mother cried every time someone mentioned his name? Alexander followed her. Emily, wait. No. She turned to him, her eyes shining with contained tears. You lied to me. You manipulated me. You brought me here under false pretenses. The feelings are real. What feelings? You don't even know me. You only know what I represent to you, the daughter of the man you hate. That's not true. Then why did you bring me here? Why did you seduce me? The word seduce hung in the air between them. Emily realized that was exactly what was happening. She had been seduced. Not just physically, but emotionally. She had lowered all her defenses for a man who had a hidden agenda. I didn't want to seduce you, Alexander said. I wanted to understand you. I wanted to know the person you became, despite everything. Despite being the daughter of a monster. Despite carrying a name that represents so much suffering. Emily went down the stairs quickly, with Alexander right behind. When she reached the living room, she picked up her purse and headed to the elevator. Where are you going? He asked. Home, away from you. Emily, please. Let me explain properly. You've explained enough. The elevator doors opened and Emily entered. Alexander put his hand on the door, preventing it from closing. There are things you need to know, he said, about your father, about the inheritance, about the people who might be looking for you. What people? People who believe that you know where the documents that Edward hid are. People who would do anything to get their hands on them. And you? Wouldn't you do anything? Alexander hesitated, and that hesitation was enough of an answer for Emily. I thought you were different, she said. I thought that maybe, for the first time in my life, someone saw me as I really am. Not as someone's daughter, not as someone's ex-wife, but as Emily. Just Emily. I see you that way. No, you see Edward Sanders' daughter. You see a tool to get what you want. That's not true. Then let me go. If you really care about me, let me go and never appear in my life again. Alexander removed his hand from the door and it began to close. At the last second, he said, They already know where you live, Emily. You're not safe. The doors closed before she could respond, but but the words echoed in the empty elevator cabin. They know where you live. You're not safe. During the journey back home, Emily tried to process everything she had discovered. Her father had left an inheritance for her. Alexander had manipulated her hiring. There were dangerous people who could be looking for her. And in the midst of all this, she had fallen in love with a man who had hidden motives for approaching her. Because that's what had happened, wasn't it? She had fallen in love with Alexander Price, not with the powerful and relentless CEO, but with the vulnerable man who cooked pasta and played guitar, who went up to the terrace when he couldn't sleep, and who smiled with dimples when he was genuinely happy. But none of that had been real, or at least not in the way she had imagined. When she arrived at her building, Emily noticed a car parked on the street that wasn't usually there. A black sedan with dark windows. It could be a coincidence, but Alexander's words echoed in her mind. They already know where you live. She quickly climbed the stairs, locked the apartment door, and leaned against it, her heart racing. Through the window, she peeked at the street. The car was still there. Emily realized that her life had completely changed in a matter of hours. In the morning, she was just an invisible cleaning lady, living a small and predictable life. Now she discovered that she was the daughter of a powerful and dangerous man, that there was an inheritance waiting for her, that there were people who might want to hurt her, and that she had fallen in love with a man who perhaps saw her only as a piece in a much larger game. But one thing Alexander had said sounded true. The feelings were real. Emily might have been wrong about many things, but not about that. She had seen something in his eyes when he looked at her, something that went beyond manipulation or material interest. The question was, did it matter? Did it change anything that he might have genuine feelings for her, if the entire basis of the relationship was a lie? Emily lay on the bed, still dressed, and looked at the ceiling. Outside, New York continued pulsing, indifferent to the personal dramas of its inhabitants, but she knew that her life had changed forever, that there was no going back. The question was, what would she do now? The answer came in the form of a knock on the door. 3 sharp, paused knocks, as if the person on the other side knew she was there, but didn't want to frighten her. Emily got up slowly, her heart beating hard. She wasn't expecting anyone. No one knew where she lived, except the people Alexander had mentioned. She approached the door on tiptoe and looked through the peephole. A man in a dark suit was standing in the hallway, his hands crossed behind his back, seeming to wait patiently. "Miss Sanders," he said, and his voice was polite, almost gentle. "I know you're there. I need to speak with you about your father." Emily leaned against the door, closing her eyes. Thus began the second part of her life, the part where she could no longer hide, the part where she would have to decide who to trust, and the part where she would discover that sometimes the only person you can trust is exactly the one who betrayed you first. Emily remained motionless for long seconds, her back pressed against the door, trying to control her breathing. The man on the other side hadn't moved. She could feel his presence there, patient, as if he had all the time in the world. "Ms. Sanders," he repeated, his voice maintaining the same polite tone. "My name is Dr. Henry Silver. I was your father's attorney. I know this must be frightening, but I need to speak with you about urgent matters related to his estate." Attorney. The word echoed in Emily's mind like a warning siren. If he had really been Edward Sanders' attorney, then he knew things that she might need to know. "How can I be sure that you are who you say you are?" she asked through the door. "I can show you my documents, my bar card, or I can tell you something that only someone close to Edward would know." There was a pause. "He kept a photo of you in his desk drawer, a photo that your mother, Helen, sent when you were 7 years old. You were wearing a blue dress with white dots, holding an ice cream cone." Emily felt her legs weaken. Her mother had never mentioned sending photos to Edward. She had never said that she maintained contact with him after she learned of the pregnancy. "That doesn't prove anything," she said, but her voice came out less convincing. "He cried when he received that photo. I was there. It was one of the few times I saw Edward Sanders show any emotion." There was something in the way he said this, a sincerity that made Emily hesitate. She looked through the peephole again. The man was older, probably in his 60s. Well-groomed grey hair, a respectable appearance that didn't match the criminal image she had constructed in her mind. "If you were really his attorney," she said, "then you know what kind of man he was. You know the things he did." "I do, and that's precisely why I need to speak with you." Because there are things that Edward did before he died, attempts at reparation, things that can make a difference for many people. What kind of things? I can explain, but not through the door. It's too delicate to be discussed like this. Emily closed her eyes, trying to think clearly. All her instincts screamed not to open that door, not to trust anyone else. But there was something in the man's voice that didn't sound threatening. And besides, Alexander's words echoed in her mind. If there were dangerous people after her, maybe it would be better to know who they were and what they wanted. "I'll open the door," she said, "but I'll keep the chain on. And if you make any move that makes me uncomfortable, I'll scream and call the police." Perfectly understandable. Emily opened the door slowly, leaving just a gap between them. The man was exactly as she had seen through the peephole, but now she could see his eyes. They were tired eyes, marked by years of carrying heavy secrets. "Thank you," he said, taking a leather wallet from the inner pocket of his jacket. "My documents." Emily examined the bar card, the ID, some business cards. Everything seemed genuine, but she knew that documents could be falsified. "Dr. Silva," she said, "if you really knew my father, then you know that I had no contact with him, that my mother hated him, that I grew up knowing practically nothing about him. I know that. And I also know that Edward carried that guilt until the last day of his life. He knew he couldn't be part of your life, that it would be too dangerous. But he never stopped following your growth, making sure that both of you were okay." "Were okay?" Emily laughed bitterly. "My mother worked 3 jobs to support us. I grew up wearing donated clothes, eating what was left over. How is that being okay?" "Because you could have been killed." The words were said with such simplicity, such certainty, that Emily felt a chill run down her spine. "Killed by whom?" "By people who wanted to use you two to get to Edward. People who still believe that you know where he kept certain information." "What information, Doctor?" Silva sighed. "May I come in? This is going to take a while to explain, and I prefer not to talk about it in the hallway." Emily hesitated a moment longer, but finally opened the door. The man entered slowly, looking around the small apartment without showing judgment or contempt. "May I?" he asked, indicating the sofa. "Of course." They sat at opposite ends of the sofa, a small tug-of-war of distrust establishing itself between them. "Your father," Dr. Silva began, "wasn't just a corrupt businessman as the media portrayed. He was a man who got involved with very dangerous people and who, at the end of his life, tried to find a way to redeem himself. Redeem himself how? He gathered evidence. Documents, recordings, financial records. Evidence that could lead to the imprisonment of some of the most powerful people in the country. Politicians, judges, businessmen, people who still today occupy important positions." Emily felt her stomach churn. "And he kept this evidence where?" "That's the question. Nobody knows. He died before revealing where he hid everything. But he left clues. Clues that theoretically only you could decipher. I don't know of any clues. Not consciously, but Edward was an intelligent man. He knew that bad people would come after this evidence. So he created a complicated system. He left some things for you, some for other people, pieces of a puzzle that only make sense when put together. What things did he leave for me?" "Doctor." Silva opened a folder he had brought with him. "A bank account. Not much money, but enough for you to start life somewhere else if necessary. And a safety deposit box." "What safety deposit box?" "In a bank downtown. He left instructions for me to deliver the key when you turned 30. I did that 2 years ago, but..." "But what?" "But someone intercepted the correspondence. Someone who knew about the inheritance and who wanted to prevent you from having access to it." "Alexander." Emily remembered his words on the terrace. "Because I prevented it." He had prevented her from receiving the inheritance, but why? What did he gain from it? "Who intercepted it?" she asked, though she knew the answer. "I can't be certain, but my investigations point to someone named Alexander Price." The name confirmed aloud made Emily feel even more betrayed. So it was true. Alexander not only knew about the inheritance, he had actively prevented her from receiving it. Why would he do that? Because Edward ruined the Price family's life. Alexander's father, Michael Price, was Edward's partner in some businesses. When everything collapsed, Michael lost everything. Literally everything. He ended up killing himself because of the debts and the shame. Emily closed her eyes, the weight of the revelation pressing on her chest. Alexander wasn't just a powerful man who had become interested in her. He was a man who blamed her father for his own father's death. He was a man who had every reason to hate her. "So he hates me," she said, more to herself than to Dr. Silva. "I don't know if it's hate. Maybe it started that way, but there are rumors that he approached you for other reasons too." "What rumors?" "That he believes you are the key to finding the documents that Edward hid. That he wants to use you to take revenge on the people who destroyed his family." Emily stood up abruptly, walking to the window. Outside, the black sedan was still parked. "That car," she said. "Is it following me?" Dr. Silva joined her at the window. "Probably. There are several people interested in you, Ms. Sanders. Alexander Price is just one of them. Who else? Politicians who are in the evidence that Edward gathered, businessmen who financed illegal schemes, people who have a lot to lose if these documents come to light. And they all think I know where the documents are. Yes, but I don't know. Not yet. But perhaps if you get access to the safety deposit box, you'll find clues that will lead you to them." Emily turned to him. "And what if I don't want to find them? What if I just want to pretend that this inheritance doesn't exist and continue with my life?" "Unfortunately, that's no longer an option. Many people already know about you. They already know that you are Edward's daughter. They won't simply give up and disappear. So what are you suggesting? That you come with me? That we go to the bank, open the safety deposit box and see what Edward left for you? Maybe it's nothing important. Maybe it's just sentimental letters or personal mementos. But we need to know. And if it is something important? And if it really is clues about where the documents are? Then you will have a very difficult decision to make." Emily looked again at the car on the street. The options weren't many. She could run, try to start over somewhere else, but Dr. Silva was right. If these people already knew about her, they would probably find her wherever she went. Or she could face the situation, discover what her father had left for her, and then decide what to do. "All right," she said. "Let's go to the bank." "Now?" "Now." The trip to downtown was tense. Dr. Silva drove a discreet car, but Emily noticed that he checked the mirrors constantly, making unnecessary detours as if he were trying to make sure they weren't being followed. "You're afraid," she observed. "I'm cautious. There's a difference." "Cautious about what?" "About the people who don't want you to find what Edward hid, and about the people who want you to find it for the wrong reasons. Like Alexander Price." "Like Alexander Price." The bank was on a discreet street near City Hall, an old building with a facade that didn't draw attention. Dr. Silva parked 2 blocks away, and they walked the rest of the way. "When we get there," he said, "you'll need 2 keys. One is with me, the other was in the correspondence that was intercepted. So we can't open the box." "We can, but in a different way. I'll use my power of attorney as executor of the will. It will take longer and draw more attention, but it's possible." Inside the bank, the process was more complicated than Emily had imagined. Documents needed to be verified, phone calls were made, forms were filled out. After 2 hours, they were finally taken to the vault area. Safety deposit box 1247 was small, the size of a shoebox. When it was opened, it revealed contents that at first glance seemed disappointing. Some old jewelry, a stack of photos, a sealed letter with Emily's name, and a small black notebook. "Is this all?" she asked. "Let's see," Dr. Silva said, picking up the notebook. Emily opened the letter first. The handwriting was masculine, firm, and for the first time in her life she was reading words written by the father she had never known. "My dear Emily," the letter began, "if you are reading this, it's because the time has finally come for you to know the truth about who I was and why I could never be part of your life. I don't expect forgiveness, as I know my actions caused too much suffering. But I hope you understand that everything I did in the end was thinking of protecting you and your mother." Emily continued reading, her hands trembling slightly. Edward spoke about the love he felt for her mother, about the pain of having to distance himself to protect them, about the mistakes he had made in life. But the most important part came at the end. "I gathered evidence about the people who corrupted me, who forced me to do terrible things, evidence that could bring justice but that could also bring danger. I hid this evidence in a safe place, but I left clues so that you could find them if you chose to do so. The clues are in the things you loved most as a child. Your mother will know what I'm talking about. She always knew this day would come." Emily looked at Dr. Silva. "My mother knew about all this. She knew. Edward kept in touch with her until the end. Discreetly, of course. She was the one who helped him create this system of clues. But she died without telling me anything, because she hoped you would never need to know. She hoped the evidence would never be necessary. Emily picked up the stack of photos. They were all of her, from baby to adult, some that she didn't know existed, that her mother must have secretly sent to Edward over the years. There was a constant in many of them. She was always holding or near a specific doll, a rag doll that her mother had made for her when she was 5 years old. "The doll," she whispered. "What?" "He says that the clues are in the things I loved most as a child. I had a doll that my mother made for me. I took it everywhere. And where is that doll now?" "In the apartment. I never could get rid of it." Dr. Silver closed the notebook. "Then that's where we need to go." "Wait," Emily said. "Before we do that, I need to know something. Are you on my side, or do you have a hidden agenda too?" The man looked at her for a long moment. "Miss Sanders, I worked for your father for 15 years. I saw him do terrible things, and I saw him try to redeem himself. My only agenda is to fulfill his last instructions, which were to protect you and let you choose what to do with the truth. And if I choose to do nothing, then it's your choice. But it needs to be an informed choice." When they left the bank, Emily noticed that the number of suspicious cars had increased. It wasn't just the black sedan now. There were at least 2 other vehicles that seemed to be watching them. "We're being followed," she said. "Yes, more than one group, it seems. That means we can't go back to my apartment." "Not directly. But I know a way." Dr. Silver took his phone and made a quick call. "I need a favor," he said to the person on the other end. "Yes, it's urgent." 20 minutes later, they were in a cafe downtown waiting. Emily was nervous, constantly checking the people around, trying to identify who might be watching them. "Who did you call?" she asked. "A friend. Someone who can help us get to your apartment without being detected." "What kind of friend?" "The kind who is very good at making people disappear when necessary." Before Emily could ask more, a man approached their table. He was young, no more than 30, dark hair and intelligent eyes. There was something familiar about him, but she couldn't identify what. "Dr. Silver," he said, sitting down. "Emily." "You know me?" she asked. "I do. I'm Alexander Price." Emily stood up from the chair so quickly that it almost fell. "You have to be kidding." "Please sit down," Alexander said calmly. "We don't have much time." "I'm not going to sit. You lied to me, you manipulated me, and now you show up here as if you were my savior?" "I'm not your savior. But at this moment I am your best option." "How did you know we were here?" "Because I sent Dr. Silver to find you." Emily turned to the attorney. "What?" "I've been working for Mr. Price for 2 years, Dr. Silver said, looking embarrassed, "since he discovered about the inheritance." "So you lied to me too?" "I didn't lie. Everything I said about your father is true. Everything I said about the documents is true. The only thing I didn't mention is that I'm working with Mr. Price to find them. Why should I trust either of you?" "Because," Alexander said, "at this moment, at least 4 different groups of people are arriving at your building, all wanting the same thing. And I am the only one who is interested in keeping you alive in the process. And why do you care if I stay alive?" Alexander looked her in the eyes, and she saw the same vulnerability she had seen on the terrace the night before. "Because I fell in love with you, and because I discovered that my revenge is not worth it if it means hurting you. You haven't known me long enough to fall in love with me. I've been watching you for 3 years, Emily. Since before you started working in my building. I know how you treat people, how you smile when you read a good book, how you always leave some food for the stray cats. I know you're too kind for this world and too strong to give up. And I know that you have nothing to do with the crimes your father committed." The words hit Emily like a punch in the stomach. There was so much sincerity in his voice, so much pain, that she almost believed him. Almost. "Even if that's true," she said, "how can I trust you after everything?" "You can't. But you can trust in the fact that I won't let anything happen to you." "Why not?" "Because you're the only good thing that has happened in my life in the last 10 years, and I'm not going to lose you." Emily looked between Alexander and Dr. Silver, trying to process all the information. Her life had become a suspense film, full of twists and characters with dubious motivations. But one thing was clear. Staying there arguing wasn't going to solve anything. "All right," she finally said, "let's get the doll, but I want answers. Real answers this time." "You'll have them," Alexander promised. "And I want to know exactly what you intend to do with the documents if we find them. That, Alexander said, will depend on what they reveal. When they left the cafe, Emily noticed that Alexander had brought 2 cars and at least 4 men who looked like professional security guards. He wasn't kidding when he said there were dangerous groups after her. "How much danger am I in?" she asked as they got into the car. "A lot," Alexander answered honestly, "but now you're not alone." Emily looked at him, at this man who had lied to her and who now swore to protect her. She didn't know if she could trust him, but she knew she didn't have many alternatives. And deep down, a part of her still wanted to believe that there was something real between them, something that went beyond documents and revenge and family secrets. Maybe it was naivete, maybe it was desperation, or maybe it was love. There was only one way to find out. The plan was simple. 2 of Alexander's security guards would enter through the front of the building, posing as visitors, while Emily and Alexander would go up through the back using the emergency staircase. Dr. Silva would stay in the car, ready to leave quickly as soon as they came down with the doll. But simple plans rarely work when lives are at stake. When they arrived at Emily's building, she immediately noticed that something was wrong. The front door, which was always locked, was slightly ajar. The doorman, Mr. Jenkins, wasn't at his post, and there were tire marks on the ground, as if cars had left in a hurry. "They got here first," Alexander muttered, speaking into the earpiece that connected him to the security guards. "Situation compromised. Await instructions." "How many groups did you say were coming?" Emily asked, her voice tense. "At least 4, but from the movement I'm seeing, it looks like they're already here." Emily looked at her building, the place that had been her refuge for 3 years, and felt a tightness in her chest. What if they hurt someone? The neighbors, Mr. Jenkins? People like these don't want to draw attention. They probably just temporarily removed the witnesses. Temporarily. They'll return when everything is over. Alexander took out his cell phone and made a quick call. "I need to know the situation at the building on Maple Street, 847. Yes, now." He waited a few seconds. "I understand. Thank you." "What is it?" Emily asked. "There are at least 2 vans parked on the back street. Armed men on the upper floors. Your apartment is being watched. So we can't get in. We can't get in through the front. But I know another way." Alexander led her to a parallel street where there was a building under construction. "Here," he said, pointing to a narrow passage between the 2 buildings. "There's a window on the 3rd floor of your building that opens onto this passage. The lock has been broken for months, never fixed." "How do you know that?" "Because I had it broken." Emily stopped walking. "You had it broken?" 3 years ago, when I started watching you. I needed a way to verify that you were safe. You broke into my apartment. I never entered your apartment. I just observed from a distance. That's stalking, Alexander. I know, and I know it's wrong, but I needed to make sure you weren't in danger. In danger from whom? From your ex-husband, from creditors, from people who might discover who you were. Emily realized that there were layers and layers of secrets in Alexander's life that she still didn't know. Layers that involved protection, obsession, and a need for control that left her simultaneously touched and frightened. "Let's go," she finally said. "But after this is over, you're going to explain everything to me. Absolutely everything." "I promise." The passage between the buildings was narrow and dark, full of debris and puddles of water. Alexander went first, testing each step, checking that there was no danger. When they reached the window on the 3rd floor, he opened it easily. "After we enter," he whispered, "we'll go straight to your apartment. You get the doll, and we leave immediately. We don't stop for anything else. And if they catch us, they won't catch us." "How can you be so sure?" "Because I won't let them." There was something in the way he said this, an iron determination that made her believe him. Alexander wasn't just a powerful CEO. He was a man who had resources, connections, and apparently experience in dangerous situations. They entered the building silently. The 3rd floor hallway was empty, but Emily could hear voices coming from the floor above. Male voices speaking softly, coordinating some kind of operation. "My apartment is on the 5th floor," she whispered. "I know." "Of course you know." They climbed the stairs slowly, stopping at each floor to listen. On the 4th floor, Emily recognized the voice of Mrs. Rose, her elderly neighbor, talking to someone. "I already told you I don't know where she is," Mrs. Rose was saying, her voice trembling. She left early for work, as always. Are you sure you didn't see her come back? A male voice asked. I'm sure. Emily felt a wave of guilt. Her search for the truth was putting innocent people in danger. People who had nothing to do with her father's crimes or Alexander's revenge. She's fine, Alexander whispered, as if he could read her thoughts. They won't hurt an old lady. They just want information. And if she doesn't know anything, then they'll leave. When they reached the 5th floor, Emily saw that her apartment door was open. Inside, she could hear the sound of furniture being turned over, drawers being opened and closed. They're looking for the doll, she said. Probably. Where did you keep it? In my bedroom. Inside the closet. In a box with other things from my childhood. Then maybe they haven't found it yet. Alexander checked the hallway in both directions, then signaled for her to follow him. They approached the apartment door slowly, pressed against the wall. Inside, Emily could see 2 men in dark suits ransacking her living room. They were different from the men who worked for Alexander. These had a harder, more violent appearance. It's not here, one of them said on the phone. I've gone through everything. There's nothing but old clothes and cheap books. Check the bedroom again, a voice replied from the other end of the line. It has to be somewhere. Emily turned to Alexander. How are we going to get in? You'll wait here. I'll distract them. No, I'm going with you. Emily, it's my home, it's my doll. It's my life that's being ransacked. I'm going with you. Alexander looked at her for a long moment, then nodded. Then stay behind me. He took something from his pocket, a small, discreet gun. Emily had never seen a real gun up close, and the sight of it made her stomach churn. Do you know how to use that? Unfortunately, yes. Unfortunately? There are many things about me that you still don't know, Emily. Not all of them are good. Before she could ask more, Alexander entered the apartment. Good afternoon, gentlemen. The 2 men turned quickly, their hands automatically going inside their jackets. I wouldn't do that, Alexander said calmly, keeping the gun pointed at them. I'm Alexander Price. I'm sure you know who I am. Price, one of the men said, his voice loaded with contempt. You shouldn't be here. Funny, I was thinking the same thing about you. It's none of your business. When it comes to Emily Sanders, everything is my business. The second man laughed. You fell in love with the daughter of the man who destroyed your family? What irony. It wasn't irony, it was destiny. Emily felt her heart skip a beat. There was something in the way he said this that sounded completely true. Where is she? The first man asked. Safe, away from you. We know she's here. We saw you arrive. Then you're not very good at what you do. The tension in the air was palpable. Emily knew the situation could explode at any moment. She moved slowly, trying to reach the bedroom without being seen. Don't move, Alexander said. But she didn't know if he was talking to her or to the men. Price, the second man said, you don't understand the situation. There are very powerful people who want these documents. People who won't hesitate to eliminate anyone who gets in the way. Including her. Including her. And you. Then we'll have to agree to disagree. Emily reached the bedroom door and looked inside. There was another man there, ransacking her things, throwing clothes and belongings on the floor. He hadn't seen her yet. The closet was open, the contents scattered, but the box with childhood things was still there in the corner, apparently untouched. Emily took a deep breath and entered the bedroom silently. The man had his back to her, focused on going through the drawers of the dresser. She approached the box slowly, her heart beating so hard that she was sure he could hear it. When she opened the box, there it was. The rag doll that her mother had made for her when she was 5 years old. Yellow wool hair, faded blue dress, an embroidered smile that had withstood years of love and play. Emily picked up the doll and pressed it against her chest. After so many years, it still smelled faintly of her mother's perfume. Hey! The man had turned and seen her. Emily stood up quickly, holding the doll. You, he said, walking toward her. You're Emily Sanders. Yes. Where are the documents? I don't know. Don't lie to me. I'm not lying. The man picked up his cell phone. She's here. I have her. From the living room, Emily heard the sound of a fight. Shouts, something breaking, rapid footsteps. Then Alexander's voice. Emily, I'm here. The man in the bedroom took a gun from his holster. You're coming with me. Now. No. It's not a request. I said no. Emily surprised herself with her own courage. A few days before, she would have automatically obeyed. But something had changed in her. Maybe it was the discovery about her father. Maybe it was the danger she was facing, or maybe it was Alexander's influence. But she was no longer the woman who hid in the shadows. "You're going to regret this," the man said, taking a step toward her. "Maybe, but I won't regret not being a coward." At that moment, Alexander appeared at the bedroom door. His face was bruised. There was blood on his shirt, but he was alive. "Step away from her," he said to the man. "Or what? Or I'll show you why you shouldn't mess with the people I love." The word love echoed in the destroyed bedroom. Emily looked at Alexander, seeing the sincerity in his eyes, the determination in his posture. "You heard him," she said to the man. "He loves me. That won't save you." "No," Alexander said, appearing fully in the doorway. "But this will." He wasn't alone. 2 of his security guards were with him, armed and ready to act. The man in the bedroom looked around, assessing his options. He was outnumbered, in a small space, with only one exit. "This isn't over," he said, putting away his gun. "No," Alexander agreed, "but for now it is." The man left the bedroom, pushed by the security guards. Emily heard footsteps in the hallway, then the sound of the front door closing. "Are they gone?" she asked. "For now, but they'll be back, and they'll bring more people." Emily looked around her destroyed apartment. Everything she owned was scattered, broken, violated. But strangely, she didn't feel sadness. She felt only a strange sense of freedom. "Are you okay?" Alexander asked, approaching her. "I am. You're bleeding." "It's nothing." Emily touched his face gently, cleaning the blood with her thumb. "Thank you." "For what?" "For protecting me. For risking your life for me." "I would do it again." "I know." They looked at each other for a long moment, the weight of everything that had happened hanging between them. "Alexander," she finally said. "Yes? When you said you love me, were you just trying to scare the man?" "No. I was telling the truth." "How can you be sure? You barely know me. I've known you for 3 years, Emily. I know how you smile when you're really happy. I know you give money to homeless people, even when you don't have money for yourself. I know you cry watching sad movies, and that you talk to stray cats as if they were people. I know you're kind, brave, and stronger than you yourself imagine. That's not love. That's obsession. No, love is when you prefer to see someone safe and far from you than in danger by your side. Love is when you're willing to give up your revenge to protect the person you love. Would you give up your revenge? I already have, the moment I decided to help you instead of using you. Emily felt tears forming in her eyes. I don't know if I can trust you. I understand. But I want to try, even knowing that I lied to you. Even knowing that you protected me when you didn't have to. Alexander approached her, touching her face with the same gentleness she had used with him. "Emily," he said, "when this is all over, when the documents are found and the dangerous people are in prison, would you like to try? Really try? Try what? Us. You and me. No lies, no secrets, no hidden agendas. Just 2 people who met in the strangest circumstances possible. Just 2 people who fell in love despite all the reasons not to fall in love." Emily looked at the doll she still held in her hands. Inside it, probably, were the clues that could change everything. That could bring justice or more danger. That could make her and Alexander have a future together, or separate them forever. "First," she said, "let's find out what my father hid." "Are you sure?" "I am. I can't build a future on a past I don't understand, even if it's dangerous. Especially because it's dangerous." Alexander smiled, and she saw pride in his eyes. "You're no longer the woman who hid in the shadows, are you?" "No. That woman died the moment you said you loved me in front of an armed man. And who is this new woman? Someone who is tired of being afraid. Someone who is ready to fight. Then let's fight together. Together." They left the destroyed apartment, carrying only the doll and the hope that, on the other side of all that madness, they could find not only the truth about Edward Sanders, but also a way to be together. But first they needed to survive what was to come. And as they descended the stairs, Emily realized that for the first time in her life she wasn't facing her fears alone. By her side was a man who had risked everything to protect her, who had given up his revenge for her, who had said he loved her in front of armed strangers. Maybe it was crazy to trust him. Maybe it was crazy to fall in love with him. But sometimes madness was the only thing that made sense. When they arrived at the car, Dr. Silver was waiting anxiously. "Did you get it?" he asked. "We got it," Emily replied, showing the doll. "Then let's find out what Edward hid." "Let's find out," Alexander agreed, "but in a safe place." "Where?" "I know a place." As the car pulled away from the building, Emily looked through the rear window. Other cars were arriving, more men were getting out of vans parked nearby. The hunt was just beginning, but she was no longer running alone, and that made all the difference. "Alexander," she said as the car navigated through New York traffic. "Yes? Thank you for teaching me to fight. You always knew how to fight, Emily. You just needed to remember how. And you? Do you remember how to love? I'm learning. With you." Emily held the doll against her chest and closed her eyes. In a matter of days, her life had become unrecognizable. But for the first time in years, she felt she was exactly where she should be, even if it was in the middle of mortal danger, even if it was in the arms of a man who had lied to her, even if it was carrying the secrets of a father she had never known. Because sometimes love is born in the most unlikely places, and sometimes it's worth risking everything for it. The safe place Alexander had mentioned was a house in the Catskill Mountains hidden among the trees, far from the curious eyes of the city. It was a property he had bought years before, officially for investment purposes, but in reality as a refuge for situations exactly like this one. During the 2-hour journey there, Emily held the doll in her lap, running her fingers through the faded wool hair, looking for something that might indicate where her father had hidden the clues. But externally, there was nothing. It was just an ordinary rag doll made with love by a mother who wanted to give something special to her daughter. "Do you have any idea what we're looking for?" Alexander asked, watching her through the rearview mirror. "My father said the clues were in the things I loved most as a child. This doll, I took it everywhere. I slept with it, played with it, told it secrets." "Secrets?" "Childish things, fears, dreams, stories I made up." Emily paused, remembering. "I used to pretend she was real, that she could protect me from the monsters under the bed. Maybe that's why he chose it, because it represented protection for you. Maybe." When they arrived at the house, Emily was impressed by the simplicity of the place. It wasn't an ostentatious mansion, but a wood and stone construction that integrated perfectly with the landscape. There was something welcoming there, something that contrasted with Alexander's minimalist and cold apartment in the city. "Do you come here often?" she asked. "When I need to think, when the city becomes unbearable. It's beautiful. My mother helped choose it. She used to say that every person needed a place where they could just be themselves. She seems to have been a wise woman." She was. You would have adored her. Inside the house, Dr. Silver immediately went to the kitchen table, where he spread some tools he had brought with him: magnifying glasses, small knives, instruments that looked surgical. "Let's examine the doll carefully," he said. "If Edward hid something in it, it was done in a way that wouldn't be easily detected." "You're not going to hurt her, are you?" Emily asked, surprising herself with her own concern. "I'll be as careful as possible." Emily handed the doll to the attorney, feeling as if she were handing over a piece of her childhood. Alexander sat beside her, taking her hand. "Are you nervous?" "Very. What if we don't find anything? What if my father was just delirious when he wrote that letter? Then we'll find another way to solve this. And what if we find something terrible, something that proves he was even worse than we thought? Then we'll deal with it together." The word "together" still sounded strange to Emily. She had spent her entire life solving problems alone, facing difficulties without help. The idea of having someone by her side, someone who was willing to share the burden, was both comforting and terrifying. "I found something," Dr. Silver announced. Emily and Alexander moved closer to the table. The attorney had carefully opened a small seam on the back of the doll, revealing a tiny compartment inside. "There's something here," he said, using tweezers to remove a small metal cylinder. "It appears to be a micro USB. "A flash drive?" Emily asked. "More sophisticated than that. It's a military-grade encrypted storage device. Very small, but capable of storing an enormous amount of data." Alexander took the device, examining it against the light. Edward wasn't kidding when he said he hid evidence. "Can we see what's inside?" "Yes, but we'll need a specialized computer, and probably a password." "What password?" Dr. Silver smiled. "Your mother once told me that Edward had a word that he associated with you two. Something he used to repeat when he talked about you. What word? Hope. Emily felt tears form in her eyes. Hope. The word that her mother always used when times got tough. The word she whispered when she thought no one was listening. He really loved us, she murmured. He always did, Dr. Silva confirmed. Even when he had to stay away. Alexander went to another room in the house, returning with a military laptop, different from any computer Emily had ever seen. Do you always carry equipment like this? She asked. When your life involves secrets and dangerous people, you learn to prepare for anything. How many things about you don't I know? Many. But you'll have time to discover them all. You're so sure we'll have a future together. I am, because I won't let anything happen to you. And what if I don't want to be protected? What if I want to face the dangers alone? Then we'll face them together. It's not the same thing. No, it's better. While Alexander connected the device to the computer, Emily examined what remained of the doll. There was something else in the internal compartment, something Dr. Silva had missed. There's something else in here, she said, carefully putting her fingers into the empty space. What is it? A key. Small, like a safe key. Another safety deposit box? No. It's different. Emily looked at the key against the light. There are numbers engraved, 1704. Does that mean anything to you? April 17th. It was my mother's birthday. Dr. Silva stopped working on the computer. Emily, do you know if your mother had any property, any place she didn't tell you about? No, she never had money to buy anything. But what if Edward had bought something for her? Something she kept secret? Impossible, she hated him, or pretended to hate him to protect you. The possibility hit Emily like a punch in the stomach. What if everything she thought she knew about the relationship between her parents was a lie? What if her mother had maintained contact with Edward all those years? Is there a way to check this? She asked. I can do some research. But first let's see what's on this device. Alexander typed the word hope into the computer, and immediately files began to appear on the screen. Hundreds of documents, photos, audio recordings. My God, Emily whispered. Your father wasn't exaggerating. There's evidence here that could bring down the government. What kind of evidence? Fraudulent contracts, recordings of incriminating conversations, records of illegal payments, names of judges, politicians, businessmen, all properly documented. And now? What do we do with this? That, a voice said behind them. You hand over to us. Emily turned and saw 3 armed men in the kitchen doorway. They weren't the same ones who had invaded her apartment. These were better dressed, more professional, more dangerous. How did you find us? Alexander asked, standing up slowly. You underestimated our resources, Price. Did you think you could hide here forever? Who are you? People who have a lot to lose if this information becomes public. The man in the center, who seemed to be the leader, approached the table. Disconnect the device, slowly. And if I don't? Alexander asked. Then the girlfriend gets hurt. One of the men pointed his gun at Emily. She could see his finger on the trigger, ready to fire. All right, Alexander said, raising his hands. But let her go. She has nothing to do with this. She is Edward Sanders' daughter. She has everything to do with this. She didn't know anything until a few days ago. But now she does. And that makes her dangerous. Emily felt a fury growing inside her. Fury at having been manipulated, at having been pursued, at having her life turned upside down for crime she hadn't committed. Am I dangerous? She asked, standing up. Emily, don't, Alexander murmured. No. I want to know. Am I dangerous because my father was a criminal? Because I have information you don't want to become public? Sit down, the leader ordered. No. I said sit down. And I said no. The man took a step toward her, but Alexander intervened. You'll have to go through me first. That can be arranged. No, Dr. Silva said suddenly. You can't hurt either of them. Why not? Because you're not the only ones who want this information. There are other groups, other interested parties. If you kill Emily or Alexander, you'll cause a war you can't win. What other groups? Federal agents, prosecutors, journalists. There are at least a dozen people who know about Edward and his evidence. If anything happens to Emily, they'll all want to know why. The leader hesitated, clearly reassessing the situation. Besides, Dr. Silva continued, you can't just take the device and leave. There are other clues, other evidence. Edward didn't put all his eggs in one basket. What other evidence? You'll have to find out, but you'll only be able to do that if Emily is alive and cooperating. Emily looked at the attorney, impressed with his ability to negotiate. She didn't know if he was lying or if there really were other interested groups, but his intervention was working. "So you have 1 hour," the leader finally said. "Find the other evidence, bring everything to us. If you don't, all 3 of you die. And if we do find it, then you might live." Might? Depends on what you find. The men left, but Emily knew they hadn't gone far. They were probably watching the house, waiting. "Are there really other pieces of evidence?" she asked Dr. Silva. "Yes, but I don't know where they are." "And the key?" "Could be the answer. We need to figure out what it opens." Alexander approached her. "Are you okay?" "No. I'm scared, confused, and tired of being treated like a chess piece." "You're not a piece. You're—" "What?" "You're the woman I love, and I won't let anything happen to you. Even if it means giving up the evidence? Even if it means giving up everything?" Emily looked him in the eyes, seeing the absolute sincerity there. "Would you really give up your revenge for me?" "I already have. The moment I decided to protect you instead of use you. But what if I want the evidence? What if I want people to pay for what they did? Then we'll find a way to do that without putting you in danger. There's no way to do this without danger. Then we'll face the danger together." Emily moved closer to him, touching his bruised face. "You know you could die because of me? I would die for you. And, more importantly, I would live for you. Even knowing I'm the daughter of a criminal? You're not responsible for your father's crimes, but I carry his blood. And you carry your mother's blood too. A woman who worked 3 jobs to raise you right. A woman who taught you to be kind, honest, brave. How do you know so much about my mother?" "Because I researched. Because I wanted to understand where your strength comes from." "And where do you think it comes from?" "From her and from you. You're stronger than either of your parents." Emily felt tears form in her eyes. "I don't feel strong." "But you are. You faced armed men. You refused to bow when they tried to intimidate you. You're here ready to discover the truth, even knowing it could be dangerous." "I'm here because you're with me." "No, you're here because you decided not to hide anymore." Dr. Silva coughed, interrupting the moment. "Excuse me, but we have 40 minutes to figure out what this key opens." "You're right," Emily said, moving away from Alexander. "Let's get to work." "I need to make some calls," Dr. Silva said. "See if I can find out if Edward bought any property in Helen's name." As he spoke on the phone, Emily and Alexander examined the files on the computer. There was so much information that it was hard to know where to start. "Look at this," Alexander said, pointing to a specific folder. "Property records." He kept a record of all the properties he bought? Apparently, even those he bought for other people. Emily opened the folder, searching for her mother's name, and there it was. A small house in Jackson Heights, bought in 1995 and kept secret for more than 20 years. "My mother had a house," she whispered. "My mother had a house and never told me. Maybe she couldn't tell you, maybe it was too dangerous, or maybe she didn't trust me, or maybe she was protecting you." Dr. Silva hung up the phone. "Confirmed. There's a property in Helen Sanders' name in Jackson Heights, bought by Edward in 1995, all taxes paid to this day." "So that's where the other evidence is," Emily said. "Probably. But we don't have time to go there. We have to try, it's our only chance. Emily, there are armed men out there, they won't let us leave. Then we have to find another way." Alexander stood up. "There's an exit at the back of the house. It leads to a trail in the woods. We can leave without being seen." "And then?" "Then we improvise." "Improvisation isn't exactly a plan." "No, but it's all we have." As they prepared to leave, Emily picked up the destroyed doll and pressed it against her chest once more. "Thank you," she whispered, as if the doll could hear her. "Thank you for keeping the secrets until now." "You're taking it?" Alexander asked. "She protected me for 30 years. I'm not going to abandon her now." "Even destroyed?" "Especially destroyed. Now she's like me." "How so?" "Hurt, but still functioning. Different from before, but still capable of love." Alexander smiled. "You have a very poetic way of seeing things. I learned from my mother. She used to say that beauty comes from scars, not from perfection. Your mother was a very wise woman." "She was. And now I'm going to find out how many secrets she kept from me." They left the house through the back, walking along the dark trail toward the main road. Emily could feel the weight of the key in her pocket, the promise of answers she might have waited her entire life for. "Alexander," she said as they walked. "Yes?" "Regardless of what we find in my mother's house, regardless of what happens with the evidence, I want you to know one thing." "What?" "I love you too." He stopped walking. "Are you sure?" "I am. I know it's crazy. I know we've only known each other for a few days, but I love you. Even knowing I lied to you. Even knowing you protected me when you could have used me. Even knowing you're willing to die for me. Emily, no, let me finish. I love you because you taught me not to be afraid. Because you showed me I'm stronger than I thought. Because you made me remember that I deserve to be loved. You always deserved to be loved. But you were the first to love me the way I am. Without trying to change me, without trying to hide me, without trying to protect me from myself. I will always protect you. I know. But now I'm going to protect you too. You don't need to. I do. Because that's what people do when they love each other. They protect each other. They kissed there in the middle of the dark trail, surrounded by dangers and uncertainties. But at that moment, nothing else mattered. Just the two of them, and the love that had been born in the most unlikely circumstances. When they separated, Emily knew that it didn't matter what they found in her mother's house. It didn't matter what secrets were revealed, what dangers they faced, because she was no longer alone. And for the first time in her life, that was enough. "Let's go," she said, taking his hand. "Let's find out what my mother was hiding." "Ready?" "Ready." But neither of them was prepared for what they would find in the house in Jackson Heights, and neither of them imagined that the biggest revelation was yet to come. The house in Jackson Heights was small, simple, hidden on a quiet street that seemed to have stopped in time. When Emily put the key in the lock, her hands were shaking so much that Alexander had to help her open the door. Inside, the scent of lavender and dried roses hit her like a wave of memories. It was her mother's perfume, preserved there as if Helen had left just yesterday. "She came here," Emily whispered, touching a chair she recognized from her childhood. "She came here and I never knew." The house was small but cozy. Old furniture that Emily remembered seeing in the apartment where she grew up, framed photos of moments she didn't know had been recorded. Photos of herself, from baby to adult, some that she had never seen. There were also photos of Edward, younger, smiling next to Helen in moments that seemed genuinely happy. "They loved each other," she said, picking up one of the photos. "They really loved each other." "You sound surprised," Alexander observed. "I grew up believing my father had abandoned my mother, that she hated him, that I was just a mistake he had made." Dr. Silver, who had managed to reach the house by an alternative route, examined the rooms with professional eyes. "There's something more here. Something your mother wanted you to find." In the master bedroom, Emily found an old trunk under the bed. It was locked, but the key they had found in the doll fit perfectly. When she opened it, she discovered more than she had expected. Letters, hundreds of letters exchanged between Helen and Edward over 20 years. Letters of love, of longing, of concern. Letters that told a completely different story from the one she had grown up believing. "My dear Helen," one of the letters said, "I know it was difficult to pretend you hated me in front of Emily, but it was the only way to protect her. If she knew we still loved each other, that we still kept in touch, bad people could use this against us." "Against her? They never separated," Emily murmured with tears in her eyes. "All this time they stayed together, in secret." "Your mother protected you," Alexander said gently. "She made you believe she was alone, so that you would be safe." "But why? Why so much secrecy?" The answer was in another letter, this one from Helen to Edward. "I discovered they're watching us." Strange men asking questions about Emily at school. "You were right, my love. She can't know about us. She can't know about you. At least, not until she's ready." At the bottom of the trunk, Emily found a sealed envelope with her name on it. It was from her mother, with instructions to be opened only after her death. "My dear daughter," the letter began, "if you're reading this, it's because the time has finally come for you to know the truth. Your father wasn't just a criminal, as the media portrayed. He was a man who got involved with the wrong people, who made terrible mistakes, but who spent the last years of his life trying to correct those mistakes. And I loved him the whole time." Emily continued reading, discovering that her mother knew about the evidence Edward had gathered, that she had helped hide it. that she had kept some of the most important proof in that very house. Behind the painting in the living room, the letter continued, there's a safe embedded in the wall. The combination is 1704. The day we met, not my birthday, as you always thought. Inside are the evidence that can change the fate of many people. But be careful, my daughter. There are powerful people who would do anything to destroy this evidence. Alexander found the painting mentioned in the letter, a simple painting of a field of sunflowers. When he removed it, it revealed a small digital safe embedded in the wall. 1704, Emily typed, and the safe opened with a soft click. Inside were original documents, photographs, computer drives, and an audio recording that made Emily's blood freeze when she began to listen to it. "Edward, you can't do this," a male voice said on the recording. "If you hand over this information, many important people will fall." "Important people who destroyed innocent families," Edward's voice replied. "People who forced me to do things I should never have done. You benefited too. You made money too. And now, I want to give it back. I want the truth to come out." "Edward, be reasonable. You have a daughter. Do you really want to put her in danger? I want to leave a better world for her, even if it means she'll discover the terrible things I did." The recording continued, revealing names, dates, amounts, a conspiracy involving politicians, judges, businessmen, all working together to manipulate bids, divert public funds, silence journalists. "Now I understand," Emily said, turning off the recording. "That's why so many people want us dead. This information could destroy dozens of powerful people, and that's exactly why we need to make it public," Dr. Silver said. "It's what Edward wanted." "But what if it puts more people in danger? What if there's retaliation?" "Then we'll face it," Alexander said, "together." At that moment, the sound of cars arriving outside made them freeze. Not just one car, several. "They found us," Dr. Silver said, peeking through the window. "Several groups. They seem to be confronting each other." "Confronting each other? There's a war out there. Different factions wanting the same information." Emily looked at the evidence spread on the table. All the truth was there, finally revealed, but that didn't mean they were safe. In fact, it meant they were in more danger than ever. "We need to get out of here," Alexander said. "Now." "Where to?" "They've surrounded the house." "There's an exit through the back. It leads to an abandoned lot." "And then?" "Then we'll deliver this information to someone who can do something with it." "Who?" "I know a federal prosecutor. Someone I can trust." As they gathered the evidence, Emily heard gunshots outside. The war between the groups had really begun. "Alexander," she said, "I need to tell you something before we leave here." "Go ahead." "When this is over, when the responsible people are arrested, when we're safe, I don't want to go back to being who I was before." "What do you mean?" "I mean that these last few days have changed me. Discovering about my father, about my mother, about you, made me realize that I was wasting my life. I was hiding, diminishing myself, accepting crumbs. And now I want more. I want to truly live. I want to truly love. I want to build something worthwhile. With the inheritance money. With or without money, but I want to build with you." Alexander approached her, taking her hands. "Emily, are you sure? After this information becomes public, my life will change too. I might not be the powerful man you met anymore. Do you think I fell in love with your power? I don't know. Sometimes people fall in love with the idea of someone, not with the real person. I fell in love with the man who cooks pasta for a cleaning lady, with the man who goes up to the terrace when he can't sleep, with the man who keeps a dusty guitar in his bedroom because he still dreams of music, with the man who's willing to risk everything to protect someone he loves. And if I lose everything? The company, the money, the power. Then we'll build something new together, even if it's difficult, especially if it's difficult." They kissed once more, a kiss that sealed not just their love, but also their partnership. When they separated, Emily knew that no matter what happened in the next few minutes, the next few hours, the next few years, she had found her place in the world. And it was by Alexander's side. "Let's go," she said. "Let's end this." The exit through the back led them to a lot full of tall grass where they could hide while the battle continued on the street. Dr. Silver managed to contact the federal prosecutor, who agreed to meet them at a neutral location. "But first," the prosecutor said on the phone, We need to make sure you get there alive. How? I'll send a protection team. Stay where you are. While they waited, Emily and Alexander took shelter behind a low wall, hearing the sound of gunfire gradually diminish. Are you afraid? He asked. Not anymore. At least not the kind of fear I had before. What kind of fear is that? Fear of being alone, fear of not being important to anyone, fear of dying without ever having really lived. And now? Now I'm afraid of losing you. But it's a different fear. It's a fear that makes me want to fight, not hide. You won't lose me. How can you be so sure? Because I won't let it happen. And because you won't let it happen either. When the protection team arrived, Emily realized that the woman leading the group looked familiar. Are you Emily Sanders? The woman asked. I am. My name is Detective Carmen Torres. I've been investigating Edward Sanders' case for 5 years. 5 years? Since he contacted me offering collaboration in exchange for protection for his daughter. My father contacted you. He did. He knew he was going to die. He knew dangerous people were after him, but before he died he wanted to ensure the evidence reached the right people. And did it? Some of it did. But the main evidence, the evidence that really mattered, was with you. With me. With you and your mother. Edward didn't trust anyone else. During the journey to the meeting place, Detective Torres explained how the investigation had progressed over the years, how many people had already been arrested, how many were still being investigated. But this evidence you brought today, she said, are the missing pieces. With them we can close in on the real masterminds. And after that? Emily asked. After that, you'll be free to live your lives, without fear, without persecution, without hiding. Are you sure? I am. Because there won't be anyone left to pursue you. The meeting with the prosecutor took place at a federal police station, surrounded by security guards. Emily handed over all the evidence, told everything she had discovered about her father and mother, answered dozens of questions. Ms. Sanders, the prosecutor said at the end, do you have any idea of the importance of what you brought today? I have an idea. This evidence will result in the arrest of at least 50 people, politicians, judges, businessmen. It will be the largest corruption scheme ever dismantled in the country. And will it bring justice to the people who were harmed? It will bring justice. And it will return billions of dollars to the public coffers. Then it was worth it. It was worth it. Your courage was worth it. 3 months later, Emily was standing on the porch of the house in the Catskill Mountains, looking at the valley below. It was early morning and fog still covered the trees, creating a dreamlike scenario. Coffee? Alexander asked, appearing beside her with 2 cups. Thank you. What are you thinking about? About how everything has changed. About how I've changed. Do you regret it? Nothing. Not the difficult moments, not the danger, not the painful discoveries about my father. Why not? Because all of that brought me to you. Alexander smiled, putting his arm around her. And brought me to you. Do you miss it? The life you had before? Sometimes, but not the loneliness, not the feeling that nothing I did really mattered. And now it matters. Now I wake up every morning knowing there's someone who loves me exactly as I am, someone who makes me want to be a better person. You were already a good person. No, I was a wounded person trying to cause more wounds. You taught me to heal instead of hurt. And you taught me not to be afraid of who I am. Even being Edward Sanders' daughter. Especially for being Edward Sanders' daughter, because now I know he wasn't just a criminal. He was a man who made mistakes but who tried to correct them. He was a man who loved my mother until the end of his life. He was a man who cared about me enough to leave a path to the truth. And your mother? My mother was a heroine. She pretended to hate him to protect me. She kept terrible secrets to keep me safe. She gave up her own happiness so that I could have a normal life. You didn't have a normal life. No, but I had a life. And now I have a life worth living. Alexander turned to her, taking her hands. Emily, there's something I want to ask you. Go ahead. We've been through so much together. Lies, dangers, secrets, revelations. But in all those moments, one thing never changed. What? What I feel for you. What you feel for me. The fact that even when everything seemed lost, we still wanted to be together. Yes, that's true. So, Alexander knelt, taking a small box from his pocket. Emily Sanders, will you marry me? Emily felt her heart stop. The ring was simple, elegant. Perfect. But even more perfect was the man offering it. "Are you sure?" she asked. "Even knowing I'll always be Edward Sanders' daughter, even knowing our story began with lies, especially because of that. Because if we manage to love each other despite all the lies, imagine what we can build based on truth. And if I say yes, then we'll spend the rest of our lives discovering what's possible when two people love each other without fear. Without fear. Without fear of giving yourself completely. Without fear of being vulnerable. Without fear of building something lasting." Emily looked at the ring, at the man kneeling before her, at the foggy valley stretching out before them. She thought about everything she had lost, the simple life, the invisibility, the false security of isolation. And she thought about everything she had gained, the truth, courage, and the love of a man who was willing to risk everything for her. "Yes," she said, extending her hand. "I want to marry you." When Alexander placed the ring on her finger, Emily felt as if a new life was really beginning. Not just a life without fear, but a life with purpose, with passion, with infinite possibilities. "I love you," she said, pulling him into a kiss. "And I love you," he replied, "forever. Forever." 6 months later, they married in a simple ceremony in the garden of the house in the Catskills. There were few guests, Dr. Silver, Detective Torres, a few close friends. But it was perfect. During the ceremony, Emily carried the mended doll, her childhood companion, that had kept the most important family secrets, no longer as a symbol of protection, but as a symbol of transformation. "Are you nervous?" Alexander asked, as they waited for the ceremony to begin. "No. For the first time in my life, I'm exactly where I want to be. Even though our story is crazy, especially because our story is crazy, because it proves that love can be born anywhere, can survive anything. Even lies? Even lies. Because in the end, the truth always wins." And what is our truth? That two wounded people met and decided to heal together. That a man thirsty for revenge discovered that love was more powerful than hate. That a woman who hid in the shadows discovered she deserved to be in the light. And that they'll live happily ever after. They'll live. Happy or not, they'll live. Completely, intensely, truly. Even if it's difficult, especially if it's difficult. During the vows, Emily spoke about how Alexander had taught her that love wasn't about protection, but about growth, that it wasn't about hiding wounds, but about healing them together. Alexander spoke about how Emily had shown him that strength came from vulnerability, that courage was born from fear, that true victory wasn't over enemies, but over oneself. "I promise," she said, "to love you not just on the easy days, but especially on the difficult days." "I promise," he replied, "to choose you every day, not just today. I promise not to hide anymore. Not from you, not from myself. I promise not to try to protect you from the dangers of life, but to face them by your side. I promise to build a future that honors our past, but that isn't limited by it. I promise to love you for who you are, not for who I want you to be." When the judge declared them husband and wife, when they kissed under the blue sky of the mountains, Emily felt that her life had finally truly begun. "Mrs. Price," Alexander said, smiling. "Mr. Price," she replied, "ready for our next adventure?" "Ready, whatever it may be, even if it's having children, even if it's having children, even if it's growing old together, especially if it's growing old together, even if it's boring and ordinary. I doubt our life will be boring. Why not? Because it's us. And our story has proved that we don't know how to do anything the ordinary way." Emily laughed, that free and genuine laugh that Alexander had fallen in love with from the first day. "Then let's go," she said. "Let's live our extraordinary life. Let's live our extraordinary life." And as they walked hand in hand toward the future, Emily knew that she had found not just love, but also herself. She had discovered that she was stronger than she imagined, braver than she dreamed, more capable of loving than she believed, and she had discovered that sometimes the most beautiful stories begin with the most unlikely situations. Sometimes love is born when two wounded people decide to heal together. Sometimes happiness comes when you stop hiding and decide to live. And sometimes the happy ending is just the beginning of an even more beautiful story, a love story that lasted forever, a story of two people who met in the shadows and decided to walk together toward the light, a story of courage, truth, and the certainty that love always wins.